Welcome to Pastorpedia. We're with Momentum, we're with Grace Seminary, we're with a weekly schedule. What do you do all week? I remember the question. A little boy was asking me, do you drive a school bus? When I was an active pastor. One of them asked me, what do you do with all that money when they bring it up at the end of the offering? What does a pastor do? We're going to talk about schedule. Welcome. I'm with Jeff Bogue, Jim Brown. We're talking about a work week. After God, let's ask it this way. After God and family and sermon prep, let's say those three things are essential. What are some things that ought to be in a pastor's schedule? Jeff
will start. I put in things like this. I think you have to build in some personal health. I kind of make that assumption there. So rest, exercise, those kind of things. When I think about my office schedule, where I'm going to invest my time next is I'm going to invest my time in leadership development, vision development, and if you have a staff health and development.
Well, that would be volunteers in a small church.
That's correct. And so you would want to spend your time there. So a little saying for you that you can lock on to, if you invest in leadership for 5 years, it'll pay off for 25 years. And so always making sure that leadership development, if it's a staff, making sure you have the staff meetings, the staff development, the staff training. If it's volunteers, it probably looks more like a breakfast and a coffee and a Saturday morning. But training them, helping them to think through what you expect, what you want, even the philosophies of the church. And then oftentimes it's problem solving with them. Like a lot of the ways that they learn is their small group isn't going well or their Sunday school isn't engaging. And that's a leadership development opportunity.
I would say all that, like that kind of is a nutshell. But in addition to that, just from a personal administration, self-leadership, I want to grow too, live in my life on mission. I would say also phone calls, catching up on messages, emails, text messages. Sometimes I want to respond back in some form or fashion, whether it's yours. You respond back or someone responds back for you, let people know that you care. I often look at the financial situation to see where we're at. I try to set goals or time to meet with people. Shepherding people is a big one.
Now, he mentioned exercise. Yeah. You guys are in both in decent shape. Many pastors are not. Why is exercise so important?
Clarity of mind, just duration, being able to
stress relief.
That's a big part of my life. Personally, been running for almost 40 years, and if I don't
get there soon.
Almost there. But if I don't exercise, and even I'd say diet is important too. But that helps me operate at optimal performance.
I think that personal health. There's some of that are just disciplines. Like when Jim says diet, I believe in that strongly. If you're going to eat out a lot, don't get the hamburger, right? So those kind of things. But I think exercise or activity. I do exercise, but not in the way that Jim does. I don't like to run. I don't like the gym. What I like to do is cut down trees and chop wood for hours on end. Like I like to work outside and things like that. But I make it a point to do that. And it's health, it's heart, it's clarity, and then for me it's stress. Like to go burn that stuff off, that emotional stress of if even feeling a pressure to preach, or the emotional stress of leading, or even bearing people's burdens, even when they're not grumpy with you. When you sit down with a couple and they're struggling with their marriage, you still feel that burden. I think that's why it's an important part to have a discipline in your week. Or you lead grumpy.
And you have to keep your church on track, making sure they're staying on mission for the goals and the vision you have ahead. And so that's a conversation with someone, that's redirecting, that's following up often with ministry leaders. How did your weekend go? Checking in with them too.
Now, I'm thinking of a master schedule, and I'm a bit of a fanatic. You don't have to agree, but if you don't, you're off the panel. If you don't build these things into your life before the week starts, they're not going to happen. Are they?
No, you end up being reactive instead of proactive, and that controls you instead of you controlling your schedule.
a master week
You
or
can
an
say no.
ideal week.
You have reasons to say no.
Right.
If you don't know what to say no to, if you're just responding without a schedule, you would end up just doing what comes your way. But you have to do what's best for you and what's best for your church. So know your best yeses.
Yeah, I think you sold me on the master schedule 20 years ago. And it's a way to build in your priorities. And what will happen in ministry life, and everybody in ministry knows this, the needy people will take all of the time if you let them. The definition of a crisis the bar gets lowered. So there's a real crisis, and then there's the I need you right now crisis, and maybe that's a real emergency or not. Master schedule puts out parameters and all those things. If you don't plan for leadership development, you will not develop leaders.
Absolutely.
If you don't plan, to Jim's point, for personal development, if you don't plan the time to read the book, because your thinking is, I'll take 5 books on vacation and I read them. Well, you won't. Plus, you need to be a parent or a grandparent on vacation. So if you don't build that in, it won't happen.
How many crises come? It's their crisis, hey, between husband and wife, and they want you immediately to intercede. And I'll often say, wait a minute, that took time to develop that. I have this set time that we can meet with you, or we're not going to fix it in the next 15 minutes. But if you allow crisis to determine your schedule, then that's all you'll do. So it keeps you on track.
And when you have a real crisis, drop everything and go do it,
Right.
throw the schedule out. Right.
And if I didn't, and I broke this rule too many times, schedule my family,
Yes.
my break time, each daughter or whatever, a child. Okay, I hope you're sold on a regular master schedule, some ideal week. Yes, a tragedy breaks it. Yes, family breaks it. What about, why do some people, let's be candid, favor do what it feels like schedule? I coach pastors, some of them don't like the idea of here's my ideal week, here's my goal.
Yeah.
Well, we're being candid. Many of them are lazy, and they just respond to what's happening. They're not efficient in taking hold of their schedule and what's best for them. And so they just, hey, some guys come into the office and
See what happens.
And you might even ask them, what are you doing this week? Well, I don't know. It depends what happens. And it's just pure laziness in administration.
Yeah, I think for a lot of guys, some of it depends on personality. And so I think a lot of the personalities who are drawn to ministry aren't administrative personalities. And so it's a weird blend that you would be really good administratively and really good relationally, right? I think another part of it is training. And so some of us have been trained that I'm a shepherd and my job is to corral and mentor and work around the sheep all the time, and they define the flow of my life. And we weren't trained to be a shepherd who leads and directs and moves their flock to different places.
It's the word pastor. That's the way I was taught and brought up, is what a pastor does. He's there to meet your needs.
That's right.
You open with saying what is a priority, and you said preaching. If this person doesn't have a master schedule, then when it comes to prep time for a message, they haven't allowed substantial time to prepare and deliver the word, then they show up on a Sunday morning. It reflects in the way they preach to it.
Sure.
And I think to what you were saying there, Knute, I think many pastors are trained to be available for the sheep 24/7 and preach.
Right.
And that's the extent of their training. It's, if you talk to the three of us, I think what we would say is lead first. Preaching even takes a backseat to that, and where it gets the highest priority is it's a part of that leadership. And so I know pastors that spend 30 hours a week on a sermon. I think that's way too much. I think understanding your flock, bringing God's word to bear on them to a point that they download it. If you're spending 30 hours a week on a sermon, you're a professor more than a pastor, and that time is lost. I'd rather you spend 15 hours a week on a sermon and take the other 15 and do leadership development. that will actually equip the saints to do the work of the ministry and move the church forward.
In addition to that, you guys agree with this, but live your life on mission. Look for opportunities to share the gospel. And so when you're preaching, it comes alive. Not only are you preaching this, but you live this.
Yeah.
And so find a way to live out your faith. And when you do that, boy, that gives you the bump you need to get through the week.
And that also is how you often integrate your family into what you're doing. Your dad or mom is going and doing this, and the kids are just coming with you. And it removes those like hard barriers of this is the church, this is my family, this is.
If you like what Andy Stanley said, a wonderful man, I think, I don't know him, but if you like what he said about working 40 hours a week, you might differ on some of this, but a master schedule keeps you on target for what you can do and helps you with discipleship, exercise, and your own family. Build that into your schedule. We're talking time, and we know this is an area where there's a lot of different opinions. You form yours, but form your schedule. Thanks for joining us on time, on how you spend your week and how you love your people, and you schedule a lot of that. You're with Pastorpedia. Jeff Bogue, Jim Brown, Knute Larson, thank you.